The bullies didn't know, they just messed with a Street Fighter champion. Now they'll never forget. Marcus Valdez had always been the type of kid who preferred shadows to spotlights. At 17, his slight frame and quiet demeanor made him practically invisible as he navigated the crowded hallways of Westfield High School. Standing barely 5'6" and weighing maybe 140 pounds soaking wet, Marcus looked like he'd snap in half if someone breathed on him too hard. His thick-rimmed glasses, always slightly askew, framed dark eyes that seemed to absorb everything while revealing nothing. Most students didn't even know his name, despite him having attended Westfield for almost 2 years now. What they definitely didn't know was that Marcus spent every evening in his uncle's gym downtown, where he'd been training in mixed martial arts since he was 12. His uncle Roberto had been a professional fighter in Mexico before moving to the States, and he'd taught Marcus everything: Brazilian jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, boxing, wrestling. Marcus could have easily dominated any high school wrestling team, but he kept his abilities hidden. His mother had made him promise years ago to never use violence unless absolutely necessary. She'd seen too many young men in their neighborhood get caught up in cycles of fighting and retaliation. "Your fists are for protecting, not proving," she'd always told him. The trouble started on a Tuesday morning in late September. Marcus was shuffling through the main hallway, trying to make it to his locker before first period, when he accidentally bumped into Derek Morrison. Derek was everything Marcus wasn't: 6'2", built like a linebacker, with the kind of swagger that came from being the star of the football team and dating the head cheerleader. His dirty blonde hair was always perfectly styled, and his leather jacket seemed permanently attached to his broad shoulders. "Watch where you're going, freak," Derek sneered, shoving Marcus hard enough to send his books scattering across the polished floor. The hallway fell silent as dozens of students turned to watch. Marcus knelt to gather his things, his face burning with embarrassment. He could feel everyone's eyes on him, but no one moved to help. Derek's friends, Tyler Blackwood and Jordan Reeves, laughed as they surrounded Marcus. Tyler was almost as big as Derek, with arms covered in tattoos he'd gotten with fake IDs. Jordan was smaller but meaner, with cold blue eyes and a reputation for picking fights with anyone he perceived as weak. "What's the matter, Four Eyes? Can't handle a little bump?" Tyler taunted, kicking one of Marcus's textbooks further down the hall. "Maybe you should stick to the library where you belong." Marcus gathered his books without looking up, his jaw clenched tight. "Just walk away," he told himself. "It's not worth it." He stood slowly, adjusting his glasses, and tried to step around them, but Derek moved to block his path. "I don't think we're done here," Derek said, his voice carrying that particular tone bullies used when they sensed weakness. "You bumped into me. Don't you think you owe me an apology?" The crowd of students grew larger, forming a loose circle around them. Marcus could hear whispered conversations, phones being pulled out to record. His hands trembled slightly as he clutched his books tighter. He looked up at Derek's face, seeing the cruel smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Sorry," Marcus mumbled, his voice barely audible. "What was that?" "I didn't hear you." Derek cupped his ear mockingly. "I said I'm sorry," Marcus repeated louder this time. "That's better. But next time, watch where you're going, or we might have a real problem." Derek stepped aside with an exaggerated bow, and his friends laughed as Marcus hurried past them. The rest of the day passed in a blur of sideways glances and muffled laughter. By lunch, everyone had heard about the incident. Marcus sat alone at his usual table in the corner of the cafeteria, picking at his sandwich while trying to ignore the stares. He pulled out his phone and texted his uncle. "Had a rough day. See you at the gym tonight." Roberto's response came quickly. "The mat doesn't lie, nephew. Come ready to work." That afternoon, Marcus threw himself into training with unusual intensity. He spent 2 hours working the heavy bag, his strikes sharp and precise. Roberto watched from across the gym, noting the tension in his nephew's shoulders. "Something's bothering you," Roberto said when Marcus finally stopped, sweat dripping down his face. Marcus shrugged, unwrapping his hands. Just some idiots at school. You want to talk about it? Nothing to talk about. I handled it. Roberto studied him for a moment. Handling something and letting it fester are two different things, Marcus. You remember what I taught you about respect, that it's earned, not given. And sometimes people need to learn the hard way that they've underestimated someone. But you choose your battles wisely. Roberto handed him a towel. Just remember, you're not a victim unless you choose to be. The words stayed with Marcus through the next few days as the bullying escalated. Derek and his friends seemed to have marked him as their new favorite target. They'd appear wherever he was, blocking his path in hallways, knocking his books out of his hands, making loud comments about his clothes or his appearance whenever teachers weren't around. The worst part wasn't the physical harassment. It was the way other students watched without intervening. Some looked uncomfortable, but no one spoke up. On Thursday, things took a nastier turn. Marcus was eating lunch alone when Tyler and Jordan approached his table. Derek was nowhere to be seen, which somehow made it worse. "Hey, glasses," Tyler said, sliding into the seat across from Marcus. "We've been thinking. You seem pretty lonely over here by yourself." Jordan sat down next to him, boxing Marcus in. "Yeah, we thought maybe you could use some friends. What do you say?" Marcus looked around the cafeteria. Students at nearby tables were pretending not to notice, but he could feel their attention like heat from a fire. He started to stand, but Tyler's hand shot out and grabbed his wrist. "Now, that's not very friendly. We're trying to have a conversation here." "Let go of me," Marcus said quietly, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. "Or what?" Jordan leaned closer, his breath reeking of cigarettes. "You'll tell a teacher? You'll cry to Mommy?" Tyler squeezed Marcus's wrist harder. "See, here's the thing. Derek thinks you disrespected him the other day, and when someone disrespects Derek, they disrespect all of us. So we figured we'd give you a chance to make it right." "What do you want?" Marcus asked. "Nothing much. Just want you to remember your place around here." Tyler twisted Marcus's wrist slightly, just enough to cause pain without being obvious to anyone watching. "Guys like you need to understand that guys like us run this school. Stay out of our way, keep your mouth shut, and maybe we'll leave you alone." Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. This wasn't just casual bullying anymore. This was a systematic campaign to make his life miserable. He thought about his uncle's words, about choosing battles wisely, but he also thought about his mother's advice about using his fists only to protect. What am I protecting by staying quiet? He wondered. Tyler finally released his wrist, and Marcus rubbed the red marks on his skin. The two bullies stood up, their point made. "Glad we could have this little chat," Jordan said with a smirk. "See you around, Marcus." The use of his name sent a chill down Marcus's spine. They'd been paying attention, learning about him. This wasn't random anymore. That night at the gym, Marcus worked harder than ever. He sparred with his uncle, taking out his frustration on the pads and the heavy bag. Roberto could see the change in him, the way his movements had become more aggressive, more focused. "You're angry," Roberto observed as they cooled down. "Yeah, I'm angry." "Good. Anger can be fuel if you use it right, but don't let it consume you." Roberto handed him a water bottle. "What are you going to do about whatever's happening at school?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know yet. Mom always said, your mother is a wise woman, but she also knows that sometimes a man has to stand up for himself. The question is, when is that time?" The answer came sooner than Marcus expected. Friday morning started like any other day, but there was a tension in the air that Marcus could feel as soon as he walked through the school doors. Students were clustering in groups, whispering and looking around as if expecting something to happen. Marcus made it to his first 3 classes without incident, but by lunch, his nerves were on edge. He was walking to his locker when he saw the crowd gathered near the gym. Students were pressed against the walls, their faces excited and nervous. Marcus tried to walk past, but something made him stop. In the center of the crowd, he could hear Derek's voice, loud and mocking. "Where is he? Where's our little friend Marcus?" Marcus's blood ran cold. He pushed through the crowd, and what he saw made his hands clench into fists. They had his backpack. Derek was holding it up like a trophy, while Tyler rummaged through it, pulling out his belongings and tossing them on the floor. His books, his notebooks, his calculator, everything scattered across the hallway floor. "Look at this," Tyler said, holding up a photo that had fallen out of one of Marcus's textbooks. It was a picture of Marcus with his mother from last Christmas, both of them smiling at the camera. Or Mama's boy carries a picture of Mommy to school. The crowd laughed, and Marcus felt something break inside his chest. That photo was precious to him. It was taken just a few months after his mother had finished her cancer treatment, when they'd finally been able to celebrate again. "Give that back," Marcus said, his voice cutting through the laughter. The crowd parted as he stepped forward. Derek turned, a cruel smile spreading across his face. Well, well, look who finally decided to show up. We were just looking at your stuff, Marcus. Hope you don't mind." "Give me the photo," Marcus repeated, his voice steadier now. Tyler held the picture up, pretending to examine it. "You know, she's not bad looking for an old lady. Maybe I should keep this. Give her a call sometime." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He could hear his pulse pounding in his ears, feel his vision narrowing. Around him, the crowd had gone completely silent, sensing that something was about to change. "That's my mother," Marcus said quietly. "Give me the photo." Jordan laughed. "Oh, he's getting tough now. What are you going to do about it, Four Eyes? You going to make us?" Marcus looked around at the faces surrounding him. Dozens of students watching, waiting to see what would happen. Some looked excited, others uncomfortable, but none of them were going to help him. Teachers were nowhere to be seen. They never were when things like this happened. He thought about his mother, about the promise he'd made to her. He thought about his uncle's words about choosing battles wisely. And he realized that this wasn't about pride or reputation anymore. This was about protecting something that mattered to him. "Last chance," Marcus said, his voice so quiet that the crowd had to strain to hear him. "Give me my things back." Derek stepped forward, towering over Marcus by nearly 8 inches. "Or what, little man? You going to fight all 3 of us?" Marcus looked up at him, and for the first time, Derek saw something in those dark eyes that made him take a half step back. There was no fear there anymore, no pleading or desperation, just a cold, calculating calm that seemed completely at odds with the skinny kid in front of him. "I'm going to ask you one more time," Marcus said, his voice carrying a new edge that made several students in the crowd shift nervously. "Give me my photo." Tyler laughed nervously and held the picture higher. "What if I just—" He started to tear it. Marcus moved faster than anyone thought possible. One moment he was standing 3 feet away, the next he was right in front of Tyler, his hand locked around Tyler's wrist with a grip that made the bigger boy cry out in pain. The photo fluttered to the ground as Tyler tried to pull away, but Marcus's grip was like a steel vise. "What the hell?" Derek started forward, but stopped when Marcus looked at him. "Don't," Marcus said simply. The word carried such quiet authority that Derek actually took a step back. Marcus squeezed Tyler's wrist harder, and Tyler dropped to one knee, his face contorting in pain. "You're breaking it," Tyler gasped. "Not yet," Marcus replied calmly, "but I will if you don't pick up that photo and hand it to me." Tyler scrambled for the photo with his free hand, practically shoving it at Marcus. The moment Marcus released him, Tyler scrambled backward, cradling his wrist. The entire hallway was dead silent. Marcus bent down and carefully gathered his books, his movements deliberate and unhurried. When he stood up, Derek and Jordan were both staring at him like they'd never seen him before. "How did you—" Jordan started. "Doesn't matter," Marcus cut him off. He shouldered his backpack and looked at each of them in turn. Here's how this is going to work from now on. You're going to leave me alone. You're going to leave my things alone. And if I ever see you bothering anyone else the way you've been bothering me, we're going to have another conversation. You can't threaten us, Derek said, but his voice lacked its usual confidence. Marcus smiled, and it wasn't a particularly pleasant expression. I'm not threatening anyone, I'm just explaining the new rules. He started to walk away, then paused and looked back. Oh, and Derek, next time you want to know what I'm capable of, just ask. Could have saved you some embarrassment. The crowd parted like water as Marcus walked through them, their whispered conversations starting before he'd even turned the corner. Behind him, Derek was helping Tyler to his feet, both of them looking shaken. What just happened? Someone in the crowd whispered. Did you see how fast he moved? Tyler's twice his size. How did he? Marcus didn't stick around to hear the rest. He walked straight to the bathroom, locked himself in a stall, and let his hands shake for exactly 1 minute. Then he took a deep breath, straightened his shoulders, and went to his next class. Word spread through Westfield High like wildfire. By the end of the day, everyone had heard some version of what happened in the hallway. Most of the stories were exaggerated. Marcus had thrown Tyler across the hallway. He'd broken Derek's nose. He'd taken on all 3 bullies at once. But the core truth remained. The quiet kid with the glasses had stood up to the school's biggest bullies and come out on top. At his locker after school, Marcus was surprised to find Jessica Martinez waiting for him. Jessica was in his AP chemistry class, a smart, pretty girl who'd never spoken to him before. "Hey," she said as he approached, "I heard about what happened at lunch." Marcus opened his locker, not sure how to respond. News travels fast. Tyler's telling everyone you attacked him for no reason, but I saw the whole thing. She paused. I'm sorry no one helped you. We should have. Marcus looked at her, seeing genuine remorse in her eyes. It's okay. Not everyone's a fighter. Maybe not, but everyone should stand up for what's right. She hesitated. Where did you learn to do that? What you did to Tyler, I mean. Marcus shrugged. My uncle owns a gym downtown. Been training there for a few years. Training in what? Mixed martial arts. Boxing, mostly. Jessica's eyes widened. You're a fighter. Like for real? I guess. Never really thought about it that way. And you never told anyone? Marcus closed his locker and shouldered his backpack. Didn't seem important. Still doesn't. As he walked away, Jessica called after him. Marcus? What you did today? It was brave. Marcus paused at the door. No, it wasn't. Brave would have been standing up to them the first time. Today was just necessary. That evening at the gym, Roberto took one look at Marcus and nodded approvingly. Better, he said simply. Better how? You're walking different. Standing different. What happened? Marcus told him the whole story as they warmed up. Roberto listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding or making small sounds of approval. And how do you feel about it? Roberto asked when Marcus finished. Honestly, good, but also, I don't know. Scared, maybe. Scared of what? Marcus thought about it as he wrapped his hands. Scared that I liked it. The look on their faces when they realized they'd underestimated me. Scared that maybe I'm not as peaceful as I thought I was. Roberto smiled. You think warriors are born without fear? Without anger? The difference between a fighter and a bully is knowing when to use that power. Today, you used it to protect something precious to you. That's exactly what it's for. What if they come back? What if they bring friends? Then you'll handle it. But I don't think they will. Bullies are predators, Marcus. They hunt the weak and the isolated. You showed them today that you're neither. Word will spread, and it won't just be those 3 who think twice before messing with you. Roberto was right. Monday morning brought a completely different experience for Marcus. As he walked through the hallways, he noticed the change immediately. Students who had never looked at him before were nodding as he passed. Some even said hello. The respect in their voices was something entirely new. Derek, Tyler, and Jordan were nowhere to be seen during the morning, but Marcus spotted them at lunch. They were sitting at their usual table, but the dynamic had shifted. Derek was still the leader, but there was a tension there that hadn't existed before. When Derek caught Marcus looking, he quickly looked away. Marcus was settling into his usual corner table when someone sat down across from him. It was Jake Morrison, a sophomore who'd been one of Derek's frequent targets. Jake was small for his age, with red hair and freckles that made him look even younger. "Hey," Jake said nervously, "mind if I sit here?" Marcus gestured to the empty chairs. "Free country. I heard what you did to Tyler and them." "That true? Depends what you heard." Jake smiled for the first time Marcus had ever seen. "I heard you made Tyler cry." "He didn't cry," Marcus said mildly, "but he did learn some manners. Think you could... would you, maybe..." Jake struggled with the words. "They been bothering you?" Jake nodded. "Every day since school started, taking my lunch money, shoving me around. Normal stuff, I guess." Marcus studied the younger boy's face. "What's your name?" "Jake Morrison." "Morrison? Like Derek Morrison?" Jake's face reddened. "He's my older brother." Marcus set down his sandwich. "Your brother's been bullying you?" "Not him directly, but he lets his friends do it, and he laughs when they tell him about it." Jake's voice got smaller. "Says it's building character." Marcus felt a familiar anger building in his chest, but this time it was cold and controlled. "That's going to stop. You can't make Derek..." "I'm not going to make Derek do anything. I'm going to have a conversation with Tyler and Jordan, and then they're going to leave you alone." Jake's eyes widened. "You'd do that? For me? Nobody deserves to be pushed around just because they're smaller, and family's supposed to protect family, not throw them to the wolves." That afternoon, Marcus waited outside the gym after school. He knew Tyler and Jordan usually came out this way after football practice. Sure enough, they appeared 20 minutes later, still in their practice gear, talking and laughing about something. They stopped when they saw Marcus leaning against the wall. "What do you want?" Tyler asked, his voice wary. "Need to talk to you both for a minute." Jordan looked around nervously. "About what?" "Jake Morrison." The two exchanged glances. "What about him?" Tyler asked. "You know what about him. The lunch money, the shoving, all of it. It stops today." Tyler tried to muster some of his old bravado. "You can't tell us what to do." Marcus pushed off from the wall and took a step forward. Both boys immediately took a step back. "I'm not telling you what to do. I'm explaining what's going to happen. You're going to leave Jake alone. You're going to tell everyone else to leave Jake alone. And if I hear about anyone messing with him, I'm going to assume it came from you two." "You can't protect everyone," Jordan said, but his voice shook slightly. "Maybe not everyone, but I can protect Jake and anyone else who needs it." Marcus looked them both in the eye. "We understand each other?" Tyler nodded quickly. Jordan took a moment longer, but eventually nodded too. "Good. Oh, and guys, what happened with Tyler's wrist the other day? That was me being gentle. Next time I might not be in such a good mood." Marcus walked away, leaving them standing there. He didn't look back, but he could feel their eyes on him until he turned the corner. The change at Westfield High was gradual, but undeniable. Within a week, Marcus had gained a reputation as someone you didn't mess with, but more importantly, he'd become someone that the underdogs could turn to. Students who'd been suffering in silence started approaching him, sometimes just to talk, sometimes asking for help. Marcus found himself becoming an accidental protector. He didn't go looking for trouble, but when trouble found someone who couldn't handle it themselves, Marcus was there. A quiet word here, a meaningful look there. Sometimes just his presence was enough to make bullies think twice. Derek, Tyler, and Jordan adapted to the new reality in different ways. Derek tried to maintain his status by picking on targets he thought Marcus wouldn't protect. But even that backfired when Marcus made it clear that his protection extended to anyone who needed it. Tyler became almost pathetically eager to avoid any conflict with Marcus, going out of his way to be polite whenever their paths crossed. Jordan seemed to harbor the most resentment, but he was smart enough to keep it to himself. The real test came 3 weeks after the hallway incident. Marcus was walking to his car after school when he heard raised voices from behind the building. He followed the sound and found Derek cornering a freshman girl named Amy Chen, demanding she give him the answers to the upcoming history test. "I don't have them," Amy was saying, her voice shaking. "I haven't even taken the test yet." "Don't lie to me," Derek snarled. "I know you're in Mr. Peterson's first period class. They took it this morning." Marcus stepped around the corner. "Problem here?" Derek spun around, his face flushing when he saw Marcus. "This doesn't concern you." "Amy, you okay?" Marcus asked, ignoring Derek entirely. The girl nodded quickly. "He was just asking about the history test." "Well, now he's done asking." Marcus looked at Derek. "Right?" Derek's jaw worked silently for a moment. Marcus could see the internal struggle playing out on his face, the desire to maintain his image, warring with the knowledge of what Marcus was capable of. "Right," Derek finally said. "We're done here." He started to walk away, then turned back. "This isn't over, Valdez." Marcus smiled. "Yeah, it is. You just don't know it yet." After Derek left, Amy looked at Marcus with wide eyes. "Thank you. He was really scaring me. He won't bother you again." "But Amy, if anyone gives you trouble, you come find me, okay?" She nodded eagerly and hurried away. Marcus watched her go, then pulled out his phone to text his uncle. "Gym tonight. Need to work on something." Roberto's response came quickly. "Always ready. What are we working on?" Marcus thought for a moment, then typed back, "Leadership." That evening, as Marcus worked the heavy bag, Roberto watched him with pride. His nephew had grown in ways that had nothing to do with physical strength. The scared, quiet boy who'd been getting pushed around was gone, replaced by a young man who understood that true power came with responsibility. "You know," Roberto said during a water break, "your mother called me today." Marcus looked up, surprised. "What did she say?" "She said some parents from your school have been calling her, thanking her for raising such a good son." "Thanking her?" "Apparently word's gotten around about what you've been doing. Standing up for the kids who can't stand up for themselves. Some parents are calling you a hero." Marcus felt his face get hot. "I'm not a hero. I just don't like seeing people get picked on." "That's exactly what makes you a hero, nephew. Heroes don't do what they do for recognition. They do it because it's right." The conversation was interrupted by the sound of the gym door opening. Marcus looked over and was surprised to see Jake Morrison walking in, followed by his parents. "Marcus," Jake called out, "my parents wanted to meet you." Roberto nudged Marcus toward the newcomers. Jake's father was a big man with kind eyes and a firm handshake. His mother was small like Jake, but there was steel in her expression. "Mr. and Mrs. Morrison," Marcus said politely. "Son," Jake's father said, "we wanted to thank you for what you did for Jake. He told us what's been happening at school and how you stepped in." "It wasn't a big deal," Marcus said. "It was to us," Jake's mother said firmly. "Our son was coming home with bruises and torn clothes, and we couldn't get him to tell us what was happening. Now he's walking taller, smiling again. That's because of you." Jake stepped forward. "I told them about your uncle's gym. They said I could join if it's okay with you." Marcus looked at Roberto, who nodded approvingly. "Always room for one more student," Roberto said, "especially one who wants to learn for the right reasons." As they discussed schedules and training programs, Marcus felt a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the workout. This was what his mother had meant about protecting instead of proving. This was what real strength looked like. Over the next month, Marcus's reputation at Westfield High solidified. He wasn't the biggest or the loudest student, but he was respected in a way that Derek and his friends had never been. Students sought him out not just for protection, but for advice. Teachers began to notice the change in the school's atmosphere. There were fewer fights, less bullying, more students willing to speak up when they saw something wrong. Derek made one last attempt to reclaim his status in early November. He'd been drinking at a party and decided to confront Marcus in front of a crowd of students. The confrontation happened in the school parking lot on a Monday morning with dozens of witnesses. "You think you're so tough," Derek slurred, clearly still feeling the effects of the weekend. "But you sucker punched Tyler. That's not fighting, that's cheating."
But more importantly, they understood that Marcus Valdez wasn't trying to take his place. The final confrontation came not with Derek, but with his enablers. Tyler and Jordan, perhaps feeling that their protection was gone with Derek's defeat, decided to make one last play for relevance. They cornered Marcus in the hallway after school, when most students had already left. "You got lucky with Derek," Tyler said, his voice shaking with false bravado. "But there's two of us and one of you." Marcus set his backpack down slowly. "You sure you want to do this?" "We're not afraid of you anymore," Jordan lied. Marcus sighed. "Okay, but let's make this quick. I've got training tonight." What followed wasn't really a fight so much as a demonstration. Marcus had spent 5 years learning how to disable opponents quickly and efficiently. Tyler charged first, throwing a wild haymaker that Marcus ducked easily.
A quick leg sweep sent Tyler to the ground, where Marcus pinned him with a knee on his chest and one hand controlling his wrist. Jordan hesitated for just a moment too long. Marcus swept his legs without even getting up from Tyler, then controlled both boys with practiced ease. The entire encounter lasted less than 30 seconds. "Here's what's going to happen," Marcus said calmly, as if he were discussing homework instead of holding two boys twice his size in submission holds. "You're going to stop trying to be tough guys. You're going to find something better to do with your time, and you're going to leave everyone at this school alone." "We can't breathe," Tyler gasped. "Yeah, that's kind of the point. Do we have an understanding?" Both boys nodded frantically. Marcus released them and stood up, brushing dust off his pants. "Good. See you around school." He picked up his backpack and walked away, leaving Tyler and Jordan lying on the floor, gasping and staring at the ceiling. That night, Marcus found his mother waiting for him in the kitchen when he got home from the gym. "Sit down, mijo," she said, using the pet name she'd called him since childhood. Marcus sat across from her at the small table, wondering if he was in trouble. "Mom, if this is about what happened at school, I'm proud of you," she said simply. Marcus blinked in surprise. "You are? Mrs. Chen called me today. Amy Chen's mother. She told me what you did for her daughter, and she's not the first parent to call." His mother reached across the table and took his hand. "You remember what I told you about your fists being for protecting?" Marcus nodded. "You've been protecting people, not hurting them out of anger or pride, but protecting them because they needed protecting. That's what a man does." "I broke my promise to you, though. I used violence." His mother smiled. "You used your strength to help people who couldn't help themselves. That's not violence, mijo. That's justice." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then his mother spoke again. "Your uncle tells me you've been different lately. More confident. I guess. I don't feel scared anymore." "Scared of what?" Marcus thought about it. "Scared of being weak, I guess. Scared that people would always see me as an easy target. And now I know that being quiet doesn't mean being weak, and being strong doesn't mean being loud." He smiled. "I like who I am now." His mother squeezed his hand. "Good, because I've always liked who you are." The rest of Marcus's senior year passed peacefully. The culture at Westfield High had shifted in subtle but important ways. Bullying didn't disappear entirely, but it was no longer tolerated the way it had been. Students were more likely to speak up, more willing to help each other, and everyone knew that if things got really bad, Marcus Valdez would be there. Marcus never sought out conflict, but he didn't back down from it either. He'd learned the difference between fighting and protecting, between strength and aggression. His reputation grew not because he was the toughest kid in school, but because he was the one who stood up for those who couldn't stand up for themselves. On graduation day, as Marcus walked across the stage to receive his diploma, he looked out at the audience and saw faces he recognized. Jake Morrison, now confident and strong after months of training at Roberto's gym. Amy Chen, who had become one of his closest friends. Even Derek Morrison was there, having found new purpose as a volunteer coach for middle school football. After the ceremony, Roberto found Marcus outside the auditorium. "Proud of you, nephew," he said, pulling Marcus into a hug. "Thanks, uncle, for everything. You know what I'm proudest of?" Marcus shook his head. "You never became them. You could have. You were strong enough, angry enough, but you chose to be better." Roberto smiled. "That's the mark of a true warrior." As Marcus looked around at his classmates, at the teachers who had watched him grow, at the underclassmen who looked up to him, he realized that his uncle was right. The greatest victory hadn't been defeating Derek or Tyler or Jordan. It had been defeating the part of himself that wanted to become like them. He'd learned that true strength wasn't about being the toughest person in the room. It was about using whatever power you had to make things better for everyone else. And as he walked toward his future, Marcus carried that lesson with him, knowing that wherever life took him, he would never forget the quiet kid who had found his voice by standing up for others. The bullies had picked on the wrong person, but in the end, everyone had become better for it.